What's going on, everybody? I have no idea why all of a sudden I am not visible, but I am speaking to you as if I am a ghost. I guess these are the problems that you sometimes deal with when you have OBS. So here's what I'm going to do. Thanks for calling me a clown, Chase. I'm going to have to restart this thing because I have no idea why it's not showing my actual face. What's going on? We're back. Technical difficulties prevented the start of the first one from beginning on time. I'm not really 100% sure how OBS works still. I had the camera working before the show started just about 5 seconds ago. Then all of a sudden I go to studio mode and I'm not actually visible anymore. Hope you're having a great Friday. I'm having a great Friday, and I hope that you enjoyed this morning's edition of Danny and Gallant. Here is how Ask Gallant Anything works, as inspired by my old days doing Gallant at night back in Houston, Texas on Sports Radio 610. You get to ask me any question and I will answer it. Yes, that's how it works. So you can do it on Facebook. You can do it on both of my Facebook accounts. I have a personal page that I accept all friend requests to. I also have a professional page. They're basically the same thing, but I post all my posts on the professional page. On Periscope and Twitter, @GallantSays is my handle there. On Twitch, @GallantSays. On YouTube, the YouTube channel is Paul Gallant. Okay, so to begin today's topic, I wanted to talk about something that I just wrote a column for 710sports.com. And on top of that, something that I feel very passionate about and I thought had been flushed down the toilet. I thought the idea that the Seahawks of bringing in Antonio Brown was nothing more than a Russell Wilson pipe dream. We heard about it about a month ago, and then it sort of just faded off into the background, and I assumed, okay, that means that they're not actually interested in him no matter what Russell Wilson wants. But then all of a sudden, this week, I heard Michael Silver of the NFL Network saying that the Seahawks have been having internal conversations about bringing in Antonio Brown, who is no doubt one of the most talented wide receivers that we have seen in the NFL over the last, let's say, 10 years? I feel like he might be the best. You could argue for other guys. Maybe you're a Julio Jones fan. Maybe you still think Larry Fitzgerald is at the top. But the guy's been awesome. Like Tyreek Hill, he is really fun to watch. But it's distasteful to root for him because the guy stinks. And I have no problem saying that Antonio Brown stinks. I don't want any part of him. I don't ever want to have a conversation with him. And I definitely don't want to be watching him on a Sunday and hoping that he does well. I know he would do well. I don't want him anywhere near this team, anywhere near a team that I rooted for. And by the way, I had him on a team that I rooted for 1 week last year. I felt gross having him aboard. I'm kind of glad that he did the kind of stupid things that you would expect out of him by literally just all he had to do was zip it, not say anything. And guess what? He spoke up and he threatened someone who had accused him of sexual misconduct. Gets released immediately afterwards. You want to bring that guy aboard. We're thinking about all the things that have been going on in the world of news of late. There have been a lot of headlines that have been coming out of the great state of Florida, a place that I used to live. I used to live in St. Petersburg, Florida. Went to high school there. Sadly, my state does not do itself very proud. It generally embarrasses itself on a regular basis. In fact, there was a story once at a place right next door to where I lived when I was in my junior year and senior year of high school about some people going into the pool and just dropping a dookie in it. That is something that took place right next door to me. Florida man headlines touch everyone. And I was wondering, who is the most Florida man person in all of sports, where you see a headline about this person, and no matter how ridiculous or crazy or insane it seems, you 100% believe it. And Antonio Brown is by far the number one. And I really want to know why there are people that actually would trust this guy on their team. In my piece for 710sports.com, I laid out a long, long list of dumb things that the guy's done over the course of his career. And most of these things, ironically, have taken place like in the last 2 to 3 years. So, let's start off with the things that have nothing to do with football. He threatened a reporter who wrote a critical article about him. He tossed furniture out of his apartment window and nearly hit a toddler. He drove over 100 miles per hour on a suburban highway. Several domestic incidents, one of which he streamed live on Instagram. A not safe for work music video where he just constantly says over and over again, I got a whole lot of money. It's a terrible rap song, and there's all sorts of scantily clad ladies around him. It's just kind of creepy. A doctor sued him for unpaid fees. There's an allegation of sexual misconduct, which, as I said before, led to Brown sending the alleged victim intimidating texts. There is a sexual assault allegation that he is still under investigation for of his ex-trainer. And on top of that, there is a no contest plea to felony burglary with a battery charge after he decided that he was going to attack somebody that was moving a bunch of his things in a moving van. Yikes. Okay, so that's just off the field.
But Paul, you're talking about things that have nothing to do with the locker room. I just want Antonio Brown to put on his Seahawks helmet and do what he's expected to do, which is play football and win.
Okay, fine. So let's talk about what he does in the locker room. He broadcast his team's celebration of a playoff victory despite his teammates' request to keep a low profile on social media. This was leading into a game against the New England Patriots. In the AFC Championship game, a little bit of bulletin board material was handed to New England. How much of an effect it had on that game, I really don't know. But there were people that saw those stories, that saw that post. It was a Facebook Live post that Antonio Brown was doing because he had a deal with them, where Mike Tomlin basically cusses out the Patriots, and some other people do as well. Wasn't a great look. I don't think it's the end of the world, but again, this is just one of many in the locker room incidents with Antonio Brown. He skipped practices leading up to a Week 17 must-win game to make the playoffs in 2018 and was benched by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He demanded a trade from Pittsburgh not too long after he was benched for that Week 17 game, and it was just 2 years after he would signed a massive extension. In fact, less than 2 years. He gets traded to the Oakland Raiders after forcing his way out. By the way, we'll get to that in a moment. But while on the Raiders, leading into what could have been a very entertaining season of Hard Knocks if they'd actually given us any light on this side of things, he got frostbite on his feet after not wearing proper footwear for a cryotherapy session. What an idiot. What are you doing, man? He refused to practice with the Raiders after the NFL banned his helmet. He tried to sneak onto the field wearing the same helmet that he had. Got kicked off the field as soon as it was found that he was wearing the old helmet. This is a helmet. He threatened to retire because of said helmet. Then he missed several practices in Oakland, was absent from a bunch of things as well. He got fined. These fines led to him getting angry at Mike Mayock, general manager of the Raiders. He confronted him in an altercation that nearly turned physical. He called him a cracker a couple of times. And on top of that, after that incident took place, he reached out to social media consultants for advice on how to expedite his release. A little bit later, he apologized with a 20-second written statement that he read out. And then, less than 24 hours later, he demanded his release. These are all the things that you'd have to deal with Antonio Brown if he were in your locker room. Okay, surely, Paul, that's not all that bad. Terrell Owens was a bad teammate. Was he this bad of a teammate? Because now let's talk about what he does on the field. He got angry during a practice after a lack of targets in 2015. Okay, that's fine, right? He pouted during the AFC Championship game in 2017 after his teammate DeAngelo Williams scored Pittsburgh's first touchdown. So he's pouting after his team scores and doesn't celebrate with them. In 2017, he threw a Gatorade cooler after a play where he was open and didn't get the ball. looked like an absolute psycho on the sideline. And then after that, he got angry at an assistant coach and sulked after a Ben Roethlisberger touchdown run and was angry throughout a game in 2018 against the Kansas City Chiefs because he was not involved in the offense enough. The funny thing about that, he had been targeted 17 times in that game. 17 times. And he had 9 catches for like 65 yards on the game. And he's mad. So imagine him here in Seattle. Pete Carroll's the head coach. A bit of a player's coach. A lot like Mike Tomlin. Russell Wilson's the quarterback. Not exactly the most confrontational person. Not someone like Ben Roethlisberger, who did call Antonio Brown out on his BS from time to time. And you're expecting one, if not both of those guys, to change Antonio Brown when Mike Tomlin couldn't. I mean, as player-friendly as you can get, that guy as head coach. Who was changing Antonio Brown? The answer is no one. The track record is long and long and long, and it dates way past the incident that a lot of you guys are theorizing is the reason for his recent erratic behavior, when Vontaze Burfict hit him in the middle of a playoff game and basically knocked his head off. It was a vicious hit, but Brown's BS has been going back all the way to Central Michigan and perhaps further. He is not going to change. There is no reason to give him a second, third, or fourth chance to change. You would be much better served giving your roster spot to somebody that you also know you can't really rely on. That's Josh Gordon. The idea of Antonio Brown in a Seahawk uniform legitimately makes me ill. So I hope, and that's, I guess, all I can do, is that they do not bring him aboard. What else are we going to talk about today? Guess what? KeyArena has a new name. KeyArena's new name, it is going to be called, I'm forgetting the name already. Where did it go? Climate Pledge Arena. And here are the details of Climate Pledge Arena. It has the goal of being the first zero-carbon arena in the world powered by renewable energy. Both on-site and off-site solar, everything's going to be electric. The ice is going to be created with rainwater that will drop with all the Seattle rain that we have off of old KeyArena's pyramid roof, be put into reservoirs somehow, and then turned into ice. Wow, that's incredible, right? All of these green initiatives. Sponsored by Amazon, by the way. A little bit of a PR ploy. I mean, they may as well, if they're going to really, I think, accurately portray themselves and what they're trying to do here, perhaps create a little jingle. How about something like this? We're talking about Climate Pledge Arena. And I pledge by the rainwater used for our ice, no carbon. I pledge solar power for electric inside. No carbon, no carbon. I know that you think this is hypocrisy, since Amazon farts carbon like a small country. No carbon, no carbon, no carbon. I think that would be a great way to present this new plan. I hate the name, I'm not going to lie. I love the initiative. And I don't really care about the hypocrisy of Amazon, which again creates more carbon than small cities. I don't have an issue with them all of a sudden saying, you know what, let's change things up a little bit. None whatsoever. But the name stinks. I'm going to still call it KeyArena. The KeyArena roof is still there. I suppose that Key is actually a sponsorship. And some of you might be thinking to yourself, Paul, what about the KFC Yum Center? Isn't that a stupid name for an arena? I suppose. Paul, there are other stadiums that have dumb corporate names all over the place, and this one is named after a pledge. Wow, it's a climate pledge as well. They're going to save the environment. Not sure I 100% believe that, because I think India and China have sort of screwed things up for us no matter what we do, no matter what part we play. It's kind of a lost cause, but that's the cynic and nihilist in me saying all of that. It's just a lame nickname. I mean, I guess you could call it something different. Maybe you call it the Greenhouse, say if the Seattle Sonics come back, if the Seattle Storm end up playing inside of it. You do have a little bit of green there. Maybe whatever hockey team plays there has green as one of its primary colors. I would hope so. I think that's the kind of obvious decision to make. Got to have a little bit of green in every single one of your Seattle teams if you're the Emerald City, right? So there's going to be a new arena. I'm excited to see it. I don't really know how realistic it is to assume that the arena is not going to have any carbon, but at the very least, they're going to try. I mean, we're talking about an ice hockey arena. It's not like they're in Florida or in Texas or something like that, and where they're going to have to pump as much air conditioning as possible into that thing to keep it cold so that the ice doesn't melt. But I mean, you're still talking about powering a hockey arena. That place got to be cold. You're not going to be able to do that with just solar power, right? Maybe there's some people smarter than me here that can figure that out, but especially in a city that from time to time goes a long time without sunlight. I mean, didn't we have 80 straight days from some point in October to March, maybe a little bit earlier than March, February, where we did not have a full day of sunlight? It was just partially cloudy for most of the day. That's something that they're probably going to have to figure out, but that's not for me to decide. So there you go. That is the two topics of the day that I wanted to dive into. I'm not going to lie. I am a little bit bummed out about the fact that right now, it doesn't really feel like sports are going to be coming back. Malcolm Jenkins, a safety for the New Orleans Saints, was on CNN, and when he was on CNN, he brought up this very, I think, smart point. If this is a non-essential business, and if players don't need to do it, and if Jenkins wants the risks to be removed before he's comfortable going back, you can't really remove the risks from playing football in a COVID-19 world, can you? You've had coaches expressing reservations and saying, this is insane. You can't actually do this. There's no way that you can have a football season with social distancing when there's huddles and there's plays and there are people running 100 miles per hour at one another. No, that's not going to happen. No matter if they wear those jet pilot masks that have been suggested as potential helmet alternatives for this coming season. I'm sorry, that's just not going to be possible to prevent the spread of a disease. And when you hear someone like Von Miller is still having a difficult time working out a long time after having tested positive for COVID-19, and you wonder what happens for Ezekiel Elliott, I think the next question is, all right, well, who's the next big-time player to get sick? Tom Brady's out here, and I love Tom Brady. You know that. Tom Brady's out here, and he's essentially quoting Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, the second president, saying we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Also, we have to fear COVID-19. And look, I'm not going to be one of those people that's telling you to wear a mask around, but I mean, if you want to stop the spread, it seems like the very smart thing to do. If you're in public, if you're inside in particular, and if you're in a crowded space, is it really so hard to put on a mask? Now, that's talking about regular people. We're talking about athletes. If the NFL and the NFL Players Association are both saying to players, listen, guys, it ain't worth it to practice right now. Let's try to calm everything down and only have NFL team-sanctioned practices, so maybe they can check players' temperatures going into practice to determine whether or not they're dealing with COVID-19 or something like that. That's, I think, a better plan than what's currently happening. But it's not just Tom Brady. I mean, Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf are doing their own thing on the side. And I know there are other players that are probably having their own private workouts that are off the grid as well. They're just not posting about it on social media. So a lot of things to be concerned about on that front. And then, I mean, you know, we talk about baseball returning, great, but we still got a ways to go before that's actually official. And it's also a sport where there's a lot of social distancing. Didn't we think that the NBA was definitively coming back just a couple of weeks ago? By the way, that's still not definitive. And now all of a sudden we're hearing that the NBA will use local, state, and federal law enforcement and former special operations forces to secure the bubble in Orlando. Okay, so they're going to have essentially giant armed guards all around the bubble in Orlando. Are superstar players going to want to deal with that? And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, they're superstar players. If I were in their shoes, I'd play. Would you? If you made millions of dollars over the course of your career and you're going to play in this truncated season where you might not even get credit if you ultimately win a championship because it's always going to have a quote-unquote asterisk next to it, are you really going to want to play? If you're LeBron James, maybe you do because you look like you have a team that has a chance to win a title this season. But if you're another star player and you're looking at this situation right now, especially if you don't have a realistic shot of making this little postseason tournament of theirs, are you going to come back? Avery Bradley of the Los Angeles Lakers, a starter, he's not coming back. And we've heard about other players as well that have publicly said they're not coming back. And I think this is just the start. And I do think that we will see an actual superstar player say, nah, I ain't coming back. All right. You can ask any question at Gallant Says on Twitter, on Twitch, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports. Let's get to some of your questions. Dowie13 asks on Twitch, hey, Paul, are you a fantasy sports guy? I am only someone who plays year-round fantasy football. I'm in 2 leagues. I'm in a league with my friends at Syracuse University. And it is a 2-quarterback league. It is a very different concept from most fantasy leagues. I actually just won the championship in that league basically based off of a stat correction. I feel bad for the person who had thought he had won and only to find out 2 days later that he hadn't. But, I mean, I got all that money, so I don't really feel that bad. And then I'm in another one with some of my friends from Houston. I don't do daily fantasy. There's too much random involved. I like the idea of if I draft a team by myself, I have control over it. I'm not really a sports gambler. I just don't. I don't like putting money on things that I don't have ultimate control over. I feel like in a fantasy football draft, I have control over who I draft, and I feel like I'm generally going to have a pretty good draft that's going to give me a chance of being a top 4 team in a 12-team league every single time. What else do we have? Billy D. Austin says, Deion Sanders' son in college is working out with Antonio Brown, and he might have lost a step or two, or Sanders' son is very fast. Look, the speed with Antonio Brown, it's not the question. Brown is going to be good if he does come back. But the question is, what is the stupid thing that he is going to do that puts the Seahawks in an awkward spot or that potentially alienates teammates on the Seahawks? Like, Josh Gordon, that guy, you know what his issues are. You know that he is a good person. That is how he's been described by many Seahawk players. With Antonio Brown, you have no idea what is going to happen next. It is so unpredictable. Mike asks, what's up, Paulie? Not much, man. I'm just chilling out on the border of the Chop, a.k.a. the Chaz, here in Seattle. It's like 5 blocks away. There's a bunch of trucks that are all lined up in the median turn lane of the street that I live on, and it looks like they're about to start unloading things from the Chop onto those trucks. Like, it's about 5 blocks straight of just trucks in the median lane. It seems like they're waiting for something. I don't know if they've changed that from now. From last I was outside when I walked down to Mighty O'Donis to get my 2 Raspberry Riots. Billy Austin asks, do you think they will cancel the season? I have a hard time thinking that the NFL will cancel it. I almost think that they would consider using scab players as players who have crossed picket lines in the past during labor strikes in sports have been described, rather than go a season without a Super Bowl. But I wonder how many people would be willing to watch that. Are you going to want to watch replacement players? I think some people might, but when it's replacements for guys who are looking for more money, I can understand why people would obviously empathize with those guys. When it's players that aren't playing because there's a disease all over the place and you don't know if a quarterback's going to be available week to week, I don't know. Basketball, I really don't know. I think that it's the fact that there has been no formal agreement in 3 weeks is definitely concerning. Baseball being back is big, and honestly, baseball still might be able to capture some of that attention that it had lost over the summer with all the bickering between owners and players along the way. Frozo asks, would the NCAA really continue on with the season if the pros don't play? I think that in the SEC, they're just like the NFL. It's really, I think, dependent on region to region state laws and region to region outbreaks. Like in Florida right now, I wonder if there was a game this weekend, if all of a sudden the game would get canceled or moved elsewhere. We've seen games canceled in the past for hurricanes. Would a game get canceled because all of a sudden there's this just dramatic increase in positive tests? And it's not possible for these college programs to keep these athletes like essentially in like a jail cell or a prison. And I know that's a weird way to describe it. Well, let's just say a dormitory for the entirety of their time that they're not on a football field. Like, these guys have their own lives. They're not getting paid by the NCAA. They get scholarships, but, like, that means that that's all they can do is basically go back to a, quote, barracks, end quote, and then head back to practice the next day. If I had to guess, the SEC is definitely going to play. I would think the Big Ten would as well. I don't know about the other conferences, but I think most Power 5 conferences will find a way to have some sort of action this coming season. But I do think that there's a chance that some of the first games of the year get canceled. So that might mean Washington and Michigan. That might mean Oregon and Ohio State. Frozo asks, do you like them Mariners in 60 games? No, I don't. The Mariners are a way away from competing, and honestly, I'm wondering now if they'll even be competitive next year because there's no Jared Kelenic likely playing for you on the major league roster. He's not going to be getting minor league reps either. He's going to have to wait until the fall league, I think, to get like the best reps he possibly can. There's only so much you can get out of being on a taxi squad. I'm of the belief that maybe you bring up Jared Kelenic to the majors, to the show, because honestly, if Jared Kelenic goes a year where he's not getting any reps, is he getting any better? No, he's not. I don't like the idea of him having his bat on his shoulder for an entire offseason because you might rattle his confidence if you bring him up to the majors. He's either going to be good or he's not. And I get it that baseball has a different mentality than football, but as someone who played football in high school, I feel like you put the guy out there and can he handle it or not? And maybe he grows into it, but I think ultimately for a guy like Kelenic, he's developed, he's confident, I think he's ready to go. Same with Logan Gilbert. And honestly, for a season like this, what are you really getting when you're playing some of these guys that you know aren't going to be with you long term? Give the young guys some reps. If their confidence is so shaken by struggles and the inability to bounce back from some struggles, a slump, then are they really worth having? See what you have as soon as you can. Do 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 scoop doop dooba doo wah shibbity doop scoop doop doop dooba doo doop boop doop. Someone asked me, did I buy a scooter? That would be my good friend Fan. I know. No, I did not buy a scooter. But that is a video of me when I was in Croatia last summer for Yacht Week, which was about a year ago exactly today, where I took a ride on a scooter throughout the beautiful, beautiful Croatian island countryside. It was wonderful. What else do we have? Question-wise. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Oh, this one's from Ocho Texto, regular listener of the old Gallant at Night radio program in Houston, Texas. How do you feel knowing Kyler Cole Murray is a better quarterback than Russell Wilson? That's wrong. Now, could Kyler Murray be a great quarterback someday? Yeah. To act like Kyler Murray is anywhere close to Russell Wilson right now is blasphemous. In fact, there is only one quarterback that is in the same conversation as Patrick Mahomes. This is not me speaking as a homer, by the way. I feel like my grading of quarterbacks based off of what I see is perhaps the best that there is in the United States of America. Yes, I'm that much of a hardo on that front. And I credit a lot of it to having grown up watching Tom Brady and just having high standards. Generally, my standard is, can this player beat the Patriots? Can this player outlast the Tom Brady Patriots? Russell Wilson proved very early on in 2012 with that game that he had his rookie season against them, with that comeback that he led, that he can. And I have been a believer in Russell Wilson ever since that moment. There are very few quarterbacks that are even, I think, close to that conversation of Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Maybe Deshaun Watson can elevate himself into that status someday. Lamar Jackson could as well. I'm a big Lamar Jackson believer, but he does need to work on some things when it comes to throwing the football. And by the way, the guy's like slid, I think, out of 360 runs in his career thus far, he's slid 12 times. 12! That stands to reason that he's going to get hurt. That's something that's got to change. But those are my top four. After that, it's subjective. I like Carson Wentz more than I like Dak Prescott, but he keeps getting hurt. I put Wentz at 5. I'd put Dak Prescott at 6. And then you have all the older quarterbacks that you're not 100% sure what you're getting still out of. Tom Brady got a great supporting cast with him in Tampa Bay, but I didn't really like what I saw from him down the stretch last year. Drew Brees, same thing. I feel like at the end of seasons, Brees' arm strength is a big problem for him if he's playing 16 games especially. Last year, he didn't even play 16 games, and look how badly he played against the Minnesota Vikings the first round of the playoffs. Other quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers is up there still, but like last year, the Packers all of a sudden started to just go away from him entirely in the offense, and now all of a sudden they draft a running back in A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. They draft a quarterback in the first round, Jordan Love. Doesn't really feel like he's part of the long-term plan. Short-term plan, yes. And obviously he carved up the Seahawks in the playoffs, but I just don't think Aaron Rodgers is the same guy. And honestly, I think that the idea of Aaron Rodgers and his skill set making him some sort of one of the all-time greats, like one of the top 3 quarterbacks of all time, I've always found that to be laughable. The guy's had a bunch of playoff one-and-dones. You can blame it on other things, but maybe not as many as Peyton Manning. But this is a guy that I feel like is a little bit erratic and is one of those quarterbacks who's going to drop back. He's going to roll out. He's going to basically not run the plays that are called for him. So not the biggest fan of him. All right, what other questions do we have? Almighty Man says, hi, old man. I feel weird being on Twitch. And at some point, I will probably play Call of Duty on Twitch. I might do Madden. I'm not doing Madden competitively ever again. I was in an online franchise with a couple of my buddies, and I just had an epic choke down the stretch. I started off 8-0, and I think I finished the season 11-5. And I just was getting so angry while playing the game. And I realized this is why I stopped playing Madden in the first place, because I can't handle losing in Madden. Froza, who's your 2 early Seahawks standout this season? 2 early standout Seahawk. I'm assuming that you mean like a young player that's going to take that next step. I think you could make a strong case for Ugo Amadi and Marquise Blair, but honestly, I want to see a little bit more out of both of them, and you have to see them on the field a little bit more. I would say Cody Barton too, but now that Jordan Brooks is in the equation, I don't really know how the rotation is going to work at linebacker. If I have to pick one, it's Marquise Blair. Blair is the one guy last season who I felt really jumped off the screen. He was laying people out. Now, why he wasn't on the field as much as he could have been, that I do not know the answer to. Maybe it's because of my guy, Bradley McDougald. But I'm not 100% sure of who that guy is going to be. If I had to bet money, I would put Marquise Blair as that guy. Deben asks, for someone interested in sports radio, would you recommend a master's degree in sports journalism? I wouldn't even recommend a degree in sports journalism, to be perfectly honest. You know what you should do? If you're someone who wants to get into sports journalism right now, stop watching this and write something or do a podcast. You have the technology to do anything right now, and practice makes perfect. A degree helps. There's no kidding about that. But there are so many avenues that you would be entirely in your own control of that you can do right now. You can put a video up on YouTube. You can upload your own podcast. This is an industry that's dramatically changing, and I think to go all in and get a degree in something that is changing so quickly that there might not even be a course for it, I don't think that's a smart idea. I went to the best broadcasting school in the country, Syracuse University. Some people would argue that Northwestern is, Arizona State, Missouri. I went to the best one in the country for a reason. It helped me open doors, but to get a master's degree, I almost feel like you're wasting years of possible reps that you could be getting to get a master's, you know? Now, if you have a degree in something else and you feel like you could get a minor, I forget college so much at this point, but if you feel like that's something you could maybe get is it associate's degree? Is that what you get at? Below a bachelor's degree? Then maybe it's worth your while. But honestly, I feel like the best thing you can do is to do stuff on your own and hopefully you get good at it. It takes a lot of luck in this industry, I'll be perfectly honest, and I've been extremely lucky. First off, getting the first job that I did in Houston as a 22-year-old, and second, getting this job here when I was in a situation where I had no job. And I love it here. I really do. I love the station I'm at. It's a great place. 710 ESPN Seattle and some great teammates there as well. Brent McKinney, in Russ we trust. Damn right. I mean, I've had this conversation before. There were times when I was in Houston where people got mad at me because I was very critical of the Houston Texans. And when I first came in, I'll be honest, I was a little bit too hard on them. Because I came in and I was a Patriots fan growing up, and I'm like, the Texans, you guys actually think that you have a chance to make it to a Super Bowl? In 2011, they had a good start to the year. Matt Schaub gets hurt. A lot of people in Houston thinks if Matt Schaub didn't get hurt with a Liz Frank injury that they go and they win that year. No, I don't buy that for a second. Because the next year when they had Schaub, they got just massacred by the Patriots. There's that Letterman jacket game and all that. I never looked at the Texans as an organization worthy of my respect. The Seahawks, on the other hand, have been different on that front. And I remember when I found out about the possibility to work there. I was like, wow, so this is a place I could go to, and I'm not going to have to pretend that I like the team, because I do like the team. I respect the way that they've done things. There aren't many teams that are like that in the NFL, and that's one of the things that you guys got to realize, especially you who do not like Pete Carroll. It is bad in some places. In Houston, it's not even bad. It's average. And now that they have a really good quarterback, it might be better than average someday. They're heading in the right direction, but it's hard to respect an organization if you don't have a great quarterback or something else like that. And that's why when I saw that there was a job here and that I could cover Russell Wilson for a living, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, I was super excited. Billy Austin asks, will the Texans be able to move up without DeAndre Hopkins? It's going to be hard. In principle, I can see how the Texans work this year. They have a lot of faith in David Johnson being able to be the David Johnson of old. I don't know if I buy that, but I'm not going to dismiss it entirely like some people are. He is extremely motivated, and you can tell that he is angry about all the criticism that he has gotten. What that means, I'm not sure, but he was really good in 2016. I would have argued he's the best running back in the NFL going into that year. At wide receiver, with Kenny Stills, with Will Fuller, with Brandon Cooks now aboard, and who am I forgetting? Oh, what's this guy? He's got those radioactive eyes. Randall Cobb. I mean, they got 4 really good receivers. That's might be the best 1 through 4 in the NFL as far as receivers. So say you go 4 wide with a running back in the shotgun every single play and just go no huddle all game or something like that. I mean, it's not quite Kansas City, but it's Kansas City light, theoretically, in principle. Watson's going to have to cut down on the interceptions. He's going to have to make some smart throws. And the defense has to be better. But it's going to be hard without DeAndre Hopkins. It really is. Do you see the Oregon State news to rename the Civil War? Man, we're really going down an interesting path when it comes to renaming things. This one, I mean, it's something that's a Pacific Northwest Civil War. It's 2 states warring against, or excuse me, check that. It is 2 people in the same state playing a game. Is it really that problematic to be called the Civil War? I don't think so. But right now, no one's got anything to do. No one's got any sports to cover. And right now, I think everyone is looking for something to get mad at. I don't find the name offensive. I can see how some people might. But, I mean, it's not like you fought in the Civil War. Does a game called the Civil War remind somebody of slavery or something like that? I'm curious as to what the rationale was. We've done some interesting things over the last couple of weeks. I, in particular, was particularly... I said particular twice in 5 words. I was very upset. Yes, I was upset. So I suppose I'm a little bit of a fraud in calling people out. Why did Ulysses S. Grant have his statue taken down? Was he a perfect president? No. In fact, some would argue he was corrupt. On top of that, he was a bit of a drunk. But this is a guy who, as far as human beings and treating all humans equally, someone who lived for a while on an Indian reservation, this is a guy who was eulogized by Frederick Douglass as, quote, a man too broad for prejudice, too humane to despise the humblest, too great to be found small at any point. In him the Negro found a protector, the Indian a friend, a vanquished foe a brother, an imperiled nation a savior. I mean, he also did have a slave. He inherited him from his father-in-law, and he freed him, despite being in the midst of financial struggles in the moment because he hated slavery. I think Ulysses S. Grant, history should look fondly on him. Was he perfect? No. Or what politician is? But the guy was in charge during one of probably the most difficult periods of United States history. Yes, the Civil War was difficult. Imagine trying to bring the country back together after the Civil War. The South's been decimated. And all of a sudden, their main source of their economy has been just ripped away from them. And I know it's weird to say it like that. Slavery was immoral and awful. But all of a sudden, the South's like, oh, what are we going to do? And Ulysses S. Grant was pretty good. I don't understand why his statue was taken down, but whatever. People are just mad right now. Brett Peterson, what summer movie that is postponed were you most looking forward to? This one is easy. Fast and Furious. I love those movies. There are times where I will go back to the end of Fast and Furious 7, and I'll just watch the build up to that Wiz Khalifa song where Dom Toretto's watching Paul Walker's character playing on the beach with Jordana Brewster and his kid, and he walks away. And then Khaleesi's second in command, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. I just know this person was in this thing, says to Dom Toretto, "You're going to leave without saying goodbye." And then Vin Diesel turns, and all of a sudden the piano starts, bing, 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 bing. And he goes, "It's never goodbye." And then they ended it so perfectly. Those movies are cheesy as heck. In fact, they're kind of bad, but I love them. I love every single second of those movies. And I'm bummed out that I have not been able to watch it. I guess it wasn't technically a summer release. I think it was supposed to release in April. I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, everything's been moving so slowly and fast at the same time that I don't really have a concept of time anymore. But that was the one that I was looking the most forward to. All right, I appreciate you guys joining me for this. We are probably going to move the time of this again, because one of the problems that we have had is that I'm basically doing these on Friday, and it's just not getting the kind of interaction that I wanted. Part of that has to do with it being on Friday. Part of it also probably has to do with the fact that, like, I'm sort of a noob in the Seattle area right now. So the idea is that we're probably going to do these on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and we're going to do them back closer to the Gallant at night time, like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Central time. So we will still continue to do these. There's not going to be one next week. I'm taking a little vacation. I will actually be in Houston for a brief little visit of friends. I'm finding out that there's probably not a whole lot that I'm going to be able to do. I will be wearing a mask. Don't worry about that. But I do miss my people in Houston. They are like family to me. I love that city. I love that place. And I want to see them for a little bit and sweat in the midst of, I guess, Sahara Desert dust storm. So it's going to be hot. There's going to be a dust storm. There's not going to be any bars to go to. I'm not going to be able to go to any pools. It's going to be an interesting experience, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing all my friends. So until the next time that I do an Ask Gallant Anything, please follow on Twitter at Gallant Says, twitch.com Gallant Says is the handle, facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, or you can add me just with my regular Facebook profile. And I am also on Instagram at Gallant Says, at SportsPaul, if you want to see sports memes and other things like that. What else do we have? What else do I have? I think that's pretty much it. YouTube, check that out as well. YouTube, Paul Gallant. Eventually, there will be good videos coming. I said that last week. Ooh, I procrastinated a little bit again until we talk again. So long, farewell, and later.